When our hero left the Temple of Gods and set off to defeat the Shadow Lords, 2 new pathways opened for him. The side exit to the abandoned path was now accessible, and a mysterious gate at the end of the gardens was now open, which no doubt was the way forward. Hey everyone, Lieutenant Dan here. Welcome back to part 5 of our Blue Fire playthrough. And as you can see, I spawned back in Stoneheart City again, which is actually okay. I did a quick wardrobe change to the blue robe, which you may recall is really less blue than the light gray one. And I wanted to see if there was any other side quests I could knock out while I was back in the city. First, I went back to that kid's house, only to discover that the kid had mysteriously vanished, leaving behind a spirit for me to collect. Had the boy turned into the spirit? I don't know, but apparently that was the end of the quest. I assume his mother had, in fact, died. Next, I climbed my way to the inn, because I was pretty sure the family portrait belonged to the inn owner. Yep. And as a reward, I got a new pair of swords. I thought they would be meh, but actually they did way more damage than my last set. The only downside was that they were green, and I wasn't a fan of that. I wanted to level up as much as I could, so I went to the Fire Shrine and spent some of my Shadow Fragments on mana upgrades. Although at the time, I wasn't even sure if this just refilled your mana bar or actually increased it. Turns out it does increase it, but it's a pretty small amount, and I couldn't tell. But I did it a few times and noted that each increase cost more fragments than the last. And then I switched my spirits around to activate the one I got from the boy, because it increased my jump height. Then I headed back to the Temple Gardens to continue my quest. Back in Raintown, I had to fight my way past these guards again, but I was fresh and I wanted to test my new swords, and this fight went pretty well. Largely, though, these tanky knights were just annoying to deal with, but that's probably because I'm just impatient, and that's why I suck at Souls-like games. And then I realized that there's a fire shrine right here that I had totally missed before. After that, I made my way down to the lower level, clearing out the enemies because I could, and remembering the usefulness of the parry maneuver. I gotta remember that more often. And then through the newly opened gate, I discovered another elevator to Firefall River, which sounded exciting, so I got in and sent the elevator down. As the elevator reached the bottom, the first thing I noticed was that it was very orange here. And that's because the river is actually lava. And I got the feeling this place would be very dangerous. But right off the bat, I found some ore and an emote plaque that I didn't recognize. Then I started playing The Floor is Lava, because it actually was lava. Then I saw this alarming sight. Some kind of giant worm monster that kept exploding and burrowed when I got close. Oh, and I discovered you can't break these hay bale looking things. But this worm was being annoying. He only came out of his hole when I was too far to hit him. I tried using my fireball, but I don't think it was doing anything. Ultimately, I decided to just leave him and continue hopping my way downriver. Although, as I crossed the river to fight this floating, exploding red guy, the worm was not interested in leaving me alone. And it turns out that the worm didn't explode, it shoots fireballs, which explode. And it shoots them aggressively. But from over here, I couldn't even target him, so I decided to make a run for it. And I ran right into the river. Turns out there are elevating platforms over the lava and you have to time your jumps correctly, which was made significantly more stressful by the incoming fireballs, but I did say this area would be dangerous. There was some kind of house down a side path, so of course I had to check it out. My timing wasn't perfect, but I actually got it first try. And inside the hut was a familiar, unsettling face, because the spirit hunter was here for some reason. So I bought a few spirit slots from him, and looted his yard, and then continued on my way, narrowly avoiding the lava yet again. I was having a hard time trying to hit these flying pimples without falling in the lava, so I decided this guy had the high ground and I shouldn't try it, and kept going down the path. More precariously timed platform jumps, an enemy that wasn't hovering over lava so I could actually defeat him without risk of falling, and then I met this little guy named Speedo, who likes to run in place. He also wanted to sell me an item for 8,000 ore. There were more huts in the next area, plus another worm. Or was it the same worm? Hard to say, but the coward retreated, same as before. Inside the hut, I met Anari, a self-described bunny man who had started a bunny sect for fans of bunnies and jumping. He wanted me to join the bunny sect for the low fee of 2,000 ore, and no offense to bunnies, but I was not about to spend my whole savings on that. And then nearby, I found the Firefall River Fire Shrine and rested there. I also reactivated that third spirit now that I had the slots, and continued on my merry way. I platformed down the path like a pro, and even had this sick recovery when I was trying to kill this pop rock and he exploded on me while I was midair. What a save! Although these guys were really annoying to defeat. There was a big doorway ahead, inconveniently guarded by more explosive tomatoes, that this sign said led to Rust Village. But there was also an emote statue which taught me Kung Fu, or rather how to do a Kung Fu bow. And I decided to continue exploring the river before I went into the village, even though that meant going face first at a worm. Ooh, what a save. But it didn't matter. And then even worse, he spawn sniped me, and that kind of ticked me off. So it was time for some science. Holy cow, that did it. If you landed a parry, you could reflect the fireball back at the worm. That was huge. Almost as huge as this jump, which I recovered from. There was another doorway ahead, but the gate was locked. And a bit further into the Temple of Doom, and after popping one more fire zit, I came upon another void course, a 3-star level called the Alchemist. A rainy blue course with lots of verticality. This level looked pretty straightforward, or so I thought. A few wall runs in, though, the game hit me with something new. A platform that was slowly rotating on axis, and I couldn't stand on it if the slope was too sharp. I had to wait for the platform to be level enough, and even then it was very disconcerting. But otherwise, this course was pretty fun because of the massive vertical sections, where you got the platforming power fantasy of nearly unlimited wall jumps. And yes, for the most part, this level was pretty straightforward, although I may be biased because I am getting pretty good at this game. Just take my word for it, and kindly ignore any clips that suggest anything else, okay? And this was tricky because the wall running led straight into a rotating platform, so I had to get the timing right or I would fall. Or I could just save myself the trouble and fall now. But third time was the charm, and the timing was actually perfect and definitely intentional. But what I couldn't see before was that it was actually 2 rotating platforms back to back, which was very sketch and had me worried. But somehow I managed to keep my balance, grab the glowing balls, not fall into the void, and vault to the pillars and climb my way to the top, where a checkpoint secured my clutch. A little more wall jumping to collect the last 2 orbs, and a void ore, and I had reached the end of the course with gusto and grace. Mostly. 15 hearts, by the way. Then it was back to the land of lava. It seemed like the way forward was down, so I jumped, and jumped again to avoid fall damage, and then took fall damage anyway, and then met this little guy named Cody, who apparently was illegally squatting in a rental or something. There was nothing to be done now, so I continued on and found some kind of shrine-looking area. I landed a good aerial combo, for once, and then pwned another fireworm as I explored further. Get wrecked, worm. There were lots of these little campsites all along the river, but they turned out to just be decorative. Then I found a lever that was tucked away behind the firefall, and it opened that unlabeled doorway I had passed. And further behind the firefall was another void course, Fury of Heraldo, a 4-star difficulty course. And this one was very unique, and I was excited to try it out. This level was all about dodging laser beams, but luckily all the lasers moved pretty slowly, so dodging was not particularly difficult. I just had to keep my cool, which was not that easy in sections like this. And then the difficulty really cranked up with this one. That was a pretty good attempt. I wasn't even mad about that. It was also at this part that I realized the lasers actually damage you, not reset you, which means I could theoretically recover, even though I didn't. But third time was the charm. Next, I had to dodge laser circles while jumping between rupturing blocks, which sounds tough, but I actually clutched it out first try, because apparently I'm getting pretty good at this game. Then it was more of the same, but with line lasers, and I cleared that section first try too. The last challenge was to jump through vertical laser rings, with the second half making you jump between break-apart blocks as well, which I almost messed up, but I made it to the end on my first attempt, and that felt really good. I have struggled with much longer on much simpler stages, so this victory was very affirming. 16 hearts, baby. And then it was back to the lava zone, where I met another little guy named Orion, who was wearing a little hood with horns on it. And then he gave me a little hood with horns on it, but I decided not to wear it. I found an emote statue tucked away in a corner, which taught me an emote called Triceps, which was proof of just how strong I've become, because I definitely work out. I found the entrance to the Steam house, but I wasn't ready to go in there yet. I wanted to go back and make sure I hadn't missed anything, like this shrine I had passed by before, where I met this little guy, a flute player named Vivaldi, who told me I had to go through the Steam house to get to Rust Village. Also, the shrine wasn't a shrine, it was another vessel of souls. Now here's the thing, I recognize that I would save myself a lot of time if I just trusted the game and did things in the order it presented them to me. I end up backtracking a lot in games like these, though sometimes that means I catch things I missed before, like how I got this spirit power in an emote chest on top of that rental property. And I don't really mind backtracking, and sometimes the game even requires it, like how this gate is open now but it wasn't before. But that little flute player just told me the entrance to Rust Village was barred, which I would have known if I'd gone through the door the first time I had passed it. But I still felt like I needed to circle back and see it for myself. And sure enough, I would have saved myself a lot of time if I just did it in order, but in the moment I always feel like I need to fully explore one area before loading another one, when I could just trust that the devs are putting it in order for a reason. Oh well. Anyway, since I now had first-hand proof, I jumped back down the river toward the steam house door, and failed embarrassingly when I tried to reflect a fireball at this worm. So I gave up and went inside the steam house. And this was a pretty cool looking dungeon. I liked the aesthetic. Obviously there was still lava, but the steam house had a brown gold palette instead of red orange. It also had these pressure pads that would unlock different doorways. Plus it had some challenging platforming, not to mention these floating blobs that shot out laser rings. They were almost always floating out over the lava, making them very difficult to attack. And they had a surprising amount of health, so they weren't really worth the effort, but I at least needed to prove that I could kill one. Ta-da! Hiding on the other side of this metal grate was the pad that unlocked this crazy looking door. And you'd think I would just go through it, but no. Why follow the obvious path when you can continue exploring and end up fighting a new kind of swordsman and absolutely demolish him? And then find another swordsman and do a slightly worse job of demolishing him. Some parkour action got me up onto a hidden platform, which led to me finding the pressure plate to a second door. Spoiler alert, I'm not going through it yet either. Instead, I jumped down to these moving platforms, which were placed adjacent to more shockwave blobs. And it quickly became apparent that it was too risky to attack them, so I resigned to just playing jump rope with their lasers. Kind of annoying and hectic, but it worked. At the end of the hallway, I got to fight another swordsman. This fight got off on the wrong foot, but I recovered with some well-timed shielding. And then I investigated this thing, but it said I needed a special weapon. Also, apparently it was full of lava. And on that note, I felt like now I could go back and open those doors. Again, I could have saved myself a lot of time by simply doing that first, but that's just not how my brain works. Apparently, I prefer to do endless jump roping rather than simply open a door before I've explored every corner of a given room. Anyway, I did make it to the door, and inside was a big room with lots of fans and a mysterious person. But did I go talk to her first? Of course not. Because look, there was a sword guy up here, and obviously I needed to kick his butt first thing. Nice. And there was another one down there, except he absolutely saw me coming. And naturally, before I go talk to this chick, I should go activate this fire shrine and save. And I can't forget to loot as I go. I mean, come on, this isn't my first day. But then I talked to this girl. And this cutscene was actually really short. It was just her noticing me and saying, "What are you doing here?" Her name was Mira, apparently. And then the cutscene was over, and I had to talk to her again outside the cutscene. Now, when I hear steam house, I imagine like a sweat lodge. But turns out this steam house houses a steam engine, which Mira said keeps the shadow at bay. Not sure about that math, but Mira sent me off to find her sister, Mia, and fix the boilers, which would also activate the elevator to Rust Village. So I headed to the locked door and picked a fight on the way, and inexplicably took a hit by walking into this guy's arm. But the key opened the door, and inside a new platforming challenge presented itself. But here's the thing, even if I didn't have to deal with this angry blob, I wasn't sure how to proceed down this path. It seemed like it was going to take some Prince of Persia level wall running, and that didn't seem feasible. Maybe if I charged up my spin attack I could pull it off, or maybe I could very stupidly fall off the platform. But if I charged my spin attack again, I could accidentally waste it because I had a bad camera angle and panicked. Not that it mattered because I was still confused about what to do next. So I panicked again and tried backtracking to safety. But instead... So then I got to thinking that there must be a not yet unlocked movement tech I needed for this hallway. So I left. And by left, I mean left. Like back out to the lava river left. I was thinking maybe I wasn't even supposed to go to the steam house first, because there was that other gate that I had unlocked. Again, this probably wouldn't be so confusing if I just trusted the game's direction. Also, screw these fireworms, man. So then, for the second time, I started making my way back upriver. I somewhat regret my choices, but also I know I'm gonna make the same mistakes in the future, but now it was time to go through the door and figure out what I had skipped. The interior was surprisingly not very fiery at all, and there was a platform that I activated with the Sanctuary Stone. And I know this game is called Blue Fire, but that caused a green fire to appear at the end of a long hallway. And then the gate lowered and a cutscene started. I was standing in front of the green fire, and Vaughn was there too. How this man sneaks his way into locked rooms is baffling, but he explained the flame. Apparently one of these Shadow Lords was named Samael, and the 4 flames were the magic spell that sealed him away, and now I had to unseal him in order to defeat him. And then Vaughn was gone, and I was confused. What did this have to do with Firefall River? Was I even supposed to be here? Or had I messed something up with all my out-of-order exploration? And how did I just whiff that very easy jump? I didn't have those answers, so I decided to backtrack some more. Of course, now I know that at this point in the game, the progression opens up and it's no longer strictly linear. But at the time, I was just confused about where I was supposed to go next. So I kinda wandered around. Step 1, I saved my progress at the fire shrine. Step 2, I tore this fireworm a new one. Step 3, I tried to reach this island that I had thought was inaccessible. And it was inaccessible. Step 4, we don't need to talk about step 4. Step 5, I made it down this other pathway that led me to a new void course. Finally, something that made sense. It was a 5-star difficulty course, but I really needed a win, so I jumped in. And holy moly, was this an insane challenge. I'm going to show you the highlights because I spent almost 15 minutes in this level. It was called Orianne's Saw, and I'm sure you can see why. This course absolutely deserved its 5-star rating. Not only was it technically challenging, it was high pressure, and I usually don't do well in those situations. Lots of precision timing, and learning patterns, and taking deep breaths so I don't panic and press the wrong button at the wrong time. Because even though I would sometimes pull off something awesome like this, first try by the way, I would still end up dying in some crazy way, like this. Or some really dumb way, like this. I'm not even going to try to show you every time I died. Just know it was a lot. But I was making steady progress through the course, even though this was the hardest thing I had experienced in this game. This part right here was insane. I had to wall run dodge the rushing saws twice, then jump between these swinging saws, then line up and execute another wall run, without hitting the spikes, of course. This part took me a long time to get. Even after figuring out the timing of the first half, lining up the second wall run was tough. Plus, I had to make sure I was saving my jumps and dash as much as possible. But finally, I managed to dodge the spikes and the saws, only to realize the gauntlet wasn't over. What the heck? The hardest section yet just got a lot harder. A vertical section of dodge the saws while wall jumping. I was baffled. So much so that I started getting stuck on the first section again, as if my brain couldn't handle it anymore. The times I did make it to the wall jump section, I just had no idea. Even though I died so many times, I feel like I should point out that at no point in this challenge was I no longer having fun. Yes, it could be frustrating. Yes, it was disheartening to get so far and then still lose. But at no point did I actually want to give up and quit, because even this ultra hard challenge was still so fun, and I knew I could beat it. Which is why, after many attempts and deep breaths, and almost whiffing it at the end, thank God for that spin jump, victory was mine. After an hour of running around the lava zone in confusion, the noble hero finally had something to celebrate.